Today we are going into part 2 of my comment that is entitled Luciferianism Beyond Christianity of Pharzhuph and Azoth, responding to Luciferax Compendium, Sinister Scriptures of the Left-Hand Path, English version by Oliveira. Lux Veritatis Luciferian. Some will ignore the context of Isaiah 12 through 14. Some will ignore the context of Isaiah 14:12 through 14, and other passages considered to be sacred scripture. More will ignore the identity of Lucifer in the identity of the term Lucifer in 2 Peter 1:19, Revelations 2:28, and Revelations 22:16. Yeah, I think it's 16, not 26. I don't know why I made so many typos, and in the Latin Church, services before Dante and Milton had their effect. We run into the idea of a shining star among beings who almost became as a god by his defiant fall with the other beings of his type. Some will use the term Lucifer in a way of enmity to Christianity, while others will see it in terms of a Christianity alternative. Why should we care so much? Our spiritual path should be what we authentically live, instead of imposed by popularity, our personal abrogations. A mercurial sort will just convey as taught, but a Luciferian will consider and bring the thoughts, words, and deeds out to illuminate by their own findings. Lux Veritatis Luciferian Reflections. There is more to the shadow than the unknown, but we need to figure out what parts of our experience and being remain buried beneath the surface to work with them instead of against them. Popular values and common experiences produce acceptance and other reactions that we may not intend or should be changed. We should look beyond news and other rumors to what the reality is about other faiths. Why is adherence to Christianity falling and adherence to Islam rising, along with certain factors of Judaism, which is responsible for the alleged evil of Abrahamic religions? And what role is a part of secularism? What part of rituals is hypocrisy? And what is like a Confucian attempt to maintain and restore values? What happens when we question? What new things are there to be and know of? Regardless of who is over us, we are responsible for our own decisions and grasp of mythology within our opportunities. Credula Deletrix, an Islamic threat? If Islam is not just an Arabic word for religion in general, and started with Muhammad ibn Abdullah, then it can be said to be an attempt to answer what Christianity didn't, or did not satisfy with. Being different is not blasphemy, and both apostates and misbelievers should be allowed their freedom. This is what Islam has always taught. But a minute minority has repeatedly made the news where they're picking up where medieval Christianity and Christendom left off. Should we accept the extreme reformist claims of Islam that ignore the fundamentals of Al-Quran and the teachings of Prophet Muhammad as being some popular or political Islam which is contrary to popularity, conservatism, and fundamentalism of the Islamic world? Even outside the 165 jihad or struggle verses and the 43 expeditions Muhammad ibn Abdullah took part in or ordered, there is much to respond to and work with for those who deny that both it is actually Islam are submissive to God, and that it is to be carried out with spiritual authority. Only a fool will deny persecution of those who either were legally or actually of al-Muslimin has occurred at some level since the time Muhammad ibn Abdullah came forth with the initial 5 verses of Surah 96. Iqra bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Iqra bismillah rabbika alladhi khalaqal insana min 'alaq, and so on forth. Many will consider it a threat for the concept of surrender, and others will for its idea of no separation of religion from government. But the Islamic law take on the term shariat, does not allow for spirituality to be enforced, nor does it stop any from believing or disbelieving what they want. A rational consideration of Islamic teaching will expose that it regards females as essentially equal to males, and it may be hard for some to figure out how they are not given a superior position in Islamic society. Despite much secularism, both crime rates and treatment of women and children tends to be vastly better than the Christian majorities in secular society. Even when looking at news, we ignore the context and make judgments contrary to the situation. We need to consider what comes from a religion and what a religion does if Sharia is more than law, but a middle path, and possibly following Islamic teaching. How can a rational person say that anything other than using the circumstances available to follow that, without extremism, is Shariatullah? Should we allow ourselves to be taken over by emotions that worry over the spread of thought, word, and deed outside our own spiritual path? Symbolica Hieroglyphicum. How do you pronounce that in Latin? The pentagram. Do you move to connect with your symbols, or do they form a representation of your identity? The direction a pentagram points has no essential bearing, or whether it shows acceptance or denial of any mythological element. It is through the small world are ourselves, as what the greater universe is seen through. It is a shape common in nature and represents the joining of the elements and the spiritual world. The law of attraction and the law of repulsion are chosen context of its workings. Baphomet as a symbol of evil and Leviathan as the inner beast have lent their attachment to them within the Church of Satan. But Thomas Hobbes might give ideas of how to make it Bahamut, Baphomet. Not Behemoth. Yeah, Behemoth is how most people say it. Bahamut. You got 5 letters there. And machine instead. Many will see it as the finding of a new law, but here we should remember the face and path of Venus in the sky among the zodiac. Once in around every 8 years. Symbolica Hieroglyphicum. The hexagram. Some will prefer the one-line form used by Aleister Crowley, and others will favor the form of the hexagram composed of 2 triangles. Since the 1880s and that Zionist movement, it has been generally referred to Judaism. However, it was not only more historical to say that the Magan Dawood was a 5-pointed star, but this Star of Solomon used by countless of other faiths before and since. The Star of Solomon was used by countless other faiths before and since. It has many more meanings than it being focused on 60 degree angles, 120-degree angles, and a symbol of the a symbol of the macrocosm as opposed to the microcosm of the pentagram. 72-degree angles and 108-degree angles, considering to be of union and place, should be enough for now. Okay, yeah, I did leave off the Symbolica, yes. Eudaimonia, a sketch about demonology, first part. Psalms 95:4 would lead a person to consider all that people worship besides God to be demons, but not even all the beings of choice among that have made enough choices in that respect. Regardless of any rebellion, some see the demons as eudaimon, or good powers. Even though Greek roots may be neutral or positive, the modern terms devil and demon certainly do not mean that, but some still see it as best to be on their side. Others operated goethe and other theurgy in hopes of controlling them as if they were gods and goddesses of their own temple and life. To many, self-deification is what Luciferianism is all about. People of all spiritual persuasions can make a study of these beings we call demons, and demons not called as such, but not all will use it in their spiritual practices. Nargargol Schlad used the term Satanology to denote the study of those who worship demons, even if they do not call it that, and the spiritual paths that allow such theistic Satanism. Satanism can be said to be of the cults that Judaism tried to copy and replace. The case is ever the more so with mainstream forms of Christianity. The Bible and associated literature both preserves and corrupts the mythology associated with the Shayatin Minal Jinn, are demons of the unseen beings. Usually unseen is the implication. Of course, people have witnessed these things of all positions of life. we can understand their references, may do something for us in physical or psychological senses, but most important is to not assume all mythology outside one's own is wrong. Dictionaries and lexicons may help us understand from one angle an alternative, scriptures and grimoires from another. But let's not forget the experience of people who knowingly encountered them and what happened with those clearly under the influence of demons. Magica Lingua. Notes on the Magical Diary. I started becoming regular with spiritual journeying when I was 7 or 8, and it wasn't until 2006, Ervolgaris, that I finally made a spiritual diary and a formal spiritual practice. I would hope that I get better with time. To outline what was practiced and experienced is essential, but most will ignore the value of future references from it by oneself and others. We and even others may have understandings of the material in the future. Luciferianism may be deemed experimental spirituality, and the refinement of journaling can help such to be the light you specifically bring. Epos Babylonicum, the basis of the current 218. For my previous spring equinox or Ostara ritual, I decided to display a reaction to a Sumerian, Akkadian, Assyrian, Babylonian themed creation mythology. The 218, Azarate, anti-cosmic Satanism, current, connects to that, and the Simon Necronomicon, which represents what Lovecraftian stories would be if true in a Mesopotamian sense. It is important to note that the only land in the Bible with a number value of 600, 666, 666, as shown in one of my videos around that number, is Mesopotamia. Previously, I had started to use the terms transcosmic and transhumanist Satanism to denote the real identity of the current. After including the phrases in some places on the internet, more prominent writers and channels ended up using the term. An underlying element of the myth is that Tiamat, Apsu, and Mumu were the initial creators by the help of Kingu and perhaps the likes of Cthulhu and Humwawa, and they will avenge the death of Apsu and overturn the rule of Marduk, the Anunnaki, other demiurges, and their false creation. 11 powers under these two chaos dragons are said to be the enlightening force to show us the living word that will overturn the illusion. But we must practice non-awareness and break the false egos. Our spiritual life should go beyond entertainment and provisions, whether by the imperfect magical square of Azarate made of different orders of the number values of Azarate. The Azarate diabolical magic square with rows of 208. The imperfect magical square of Azarate made up of 5 rows where the number values of the letters for Azaroth are recorded, or other means. It is for us to continually transform. Isn't Luciferianism about that child stage of further development of ourselves, whether or not it is from the imposed social order? Azoth, divinity, formula, concept. We can look upon the letters of Azoth as an ox head or human spread out, a plow or sword, the back of the head are bowing, an ox head or human spread out, and a basket or tooth. We can say as means since, then, time, when, then, or yet. Zur would mean span, spread, crown, or harvest the heads. Ra would mean raw, not raw, would mean appearance or see. Ath would mean coral, ox contained, charmer, gentle, softly, gently, charmer, or secret. Azoth may also mean an expression of fear of removal. Some will reduce the number value of its letters to 11, which is the hour and minute for my meditation today on the 9th Enochian key, as I was writing that. Today is the day for the 24th Enochian author for me. Some will link Azoth to rulers, but it mainly is the meta-deity of the 11 demons of the spheres are separate of the Klipot or Ashia. Most who speak about the Sitra, Atara, or other side will not even know how to pronounce the infernal names, much less give you meaning and in-depth context, but it is available both before Judaism and in its language of the second-hand interpretations, Hebrew. Anti-cosmic Satanism is about returning chaos to the cosmos, and it is the ultimate conclusions of all these spiritual claims of the world being illusory are needing to be destroyed, to be restored with better. We have to operate within the material universe, and maybe should understand it in terms beyond that. That would make the 218 current transcosmic. In seeking to continually develop and transform past the human failings in thought, word, and deed, wouldn't it be better to consider ourselves in a transhumanist current instead of misanthropic? Surely there is more to breaking false egos and oppression than by Satanism. People will consider the negative entities are such names of divinity as anti-cosmic gods and goddesses. But do we have to limit by form or demonize those beings that precede humans and transcend the material universe? Apus Babylonicum, ancient Mesopotamian mythology. In my Damnation of Marduk, Enki, and the Anunnaki, a Sumerian anti-cosmic Necronomicon spring equinox ritual. I'm surprised there wasn't any comments for this year's spring equinox ritual. I put forth the cosmology of demiurges and the overcoming of them by humanity, and that which predates those. When we enact or present mythology, we can certainly not only claim, but take part in the like of these things for ourselves. The Enuma Elish was reworked in the Simon Necronomicon, and variations upon other Mesopotamian mythology continues to be reworked by occultists, organizing and expressing their own beliefs and experiences. My stomach's rumbling, and I think I heard some sound outside, so this is going to end quickly, right? Obviously, their history goes back further than the Babylonian, Assyrian, Sumerian, Akkadian, Uruk, Gaura, and Ubaid periods, but that and the Yazidi culture that was recorded by some Sufis and an apostate from Shia Islam may be the most relevant to the illumination of the 218 current. Göbekli Tepe descended from their 30,000 year or older culture of faith for Shaitan cast out of a place. That's the Avestan meaning of that Avestan term. Means different in a little bit different in other languages, but same being, right? Malak Taus and the 6 or 7 leaders of the Yazatas. Yazatas means worshipped, which were universally considered worship-worthy, Yazdan. In Avest, again, I'm using Avestan terms here. Then it became known by the northern Semitic Azazel, and is now commonly known by the Arabic name Azazel, and it has manifested in various forms through history and prehistory. But the last known was a peacock that taught the Yazidi what remains in their current scriptures and traditions. This is the reason for their current calendar. Charshma Sor, or their new year, starts year 6,769, is April 17th in the 2019, and April 15th in 2020, Era Vulgaris. Quiet down, stomach. I will feed you soon. Well, I certainly hear it. And feel it. The overlapping theme is the rebellion against the current order, a connection to those said to be a previous stages of existence, and a magical model to be part of the return, believing in respite of the jinn and seeing possibility of an infernal trinity. I included Tiamat, Apsu, and Mumu on the same side as Kingu, Cthulhu, and Humwawa, with Marduk Enki, and the Anunnaki, Anunnaku, as the false gods to deny and overcome. So an X, or Kingu, it's hard to tell sometimes with ancient languages. There's ambiguity of how the pronunciation would have really went, but Kingu is likely enough to be the right pronunciation. I portrayed the myth as being in 7 stages of creation, and the demiurgic as being mixed in with the 8th stage. We can be a part of lifting this demiurgic control and illusion, which returns the tablets of fate to destiny, to their rightful place on an individual and collective level. The 11 powers of Tiamat can be established over these Igegu. The Igegu means 10 entities, that now may be seen as the 10 main separat of the Athalut, or divine realm, and their corresponding centers in the Yetzirah, or human realm, according to the Kabbalah. The spiritual war of those considered gods and goddesses, our Shayatin, Min al-Jinn, continues among themselves and others. What side will you choose? And what do you want to return? bibliography. In concluding, I do not write these papers to present the work of others as my own, but to rework and sum up my understanding. In thus saying, I am not to copy an index or bibliography. I might, say, well, they will read these type of books or something. But yeah, it's not for me to do. I will tend to leave doubt as to what comes from me, what is interpreting the material, and what is a summary. Considering Aleister Crowley, characters that are more acceptable to the majority of people, and even those more sinister, are considered fraudulent, some of them, would be work considering as you process and inflame the light of the past into your own development that can and will shine forth as you become a Lucifer. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get prints in time. There's not a printer I have access to ready. But I should have the file to progress through the series Christian and Gnostic Satanism, Luciferianism beyond Satanism, and whichever order I'd perverted and criminal Satanism is going to be the last set of this series. And then I'm going to probably just switch to a series that I wrote for a first year response, responding to the New Age religion, and then take a break for the 9th month and let things go out from there. But lux et nox, nox et lux. Luciferium meam.